I often look at the scrap wood lying around the property and see potential projects instead of just kindling. It's a habit that makes me save every single offcut for later, rather than tossing it into the firewood pile. Sometimes that hoarding pays off. I needed some boards for wooden clamps for my workbench project, and as it turns out, these scraps are the ideal length. I only need 2 of them, so a quick cut gives me exactly what I need to work with. With the boards ready, I need 2 wooden blocks for the tile ends, which I dug out from my offcut storage. I fitted them both to the ends of the boards. This is oak, so you've got to use pilot holes before driving in construction screws. The uglier block still had an old screw sticking out of it, but I don't really care, this is a purely utility build. Sure, I could just order pipe clamps online, but doing this by hand is significantly more fun. I think of those projects like DevOps automation scripts. They're hacky, they're ugly, but they solve a vital task. You build them as a temporary solution that somehow stays relevant for years without a single change. Now for the other side, I decided to use another offcut block that I cut in half off camera. I mounted it into the vise and drilled shallow 19mm holes for the nuts to sit in, which is about 3/4 of an inch, followed by smaller holes all the way through. I'm using some 12mm scrap threaded rods, which is equivalent to half an inch, that I had lying around, so the holes need to be a tad wider than the rod itself. Next up, not installation. I thought I'd need to chisel out the recesses, but after the first hammer swing, I realized they'd press fit just fine without any adjustments. The block is pine, so even the end grain is incredibly soft. The second one didn't end up perfectly flush because I was drilling by eye, but it will do. Time to insert the rods and install the blocks. Naturally, my drill battery died and the spare was empty, so I had to fall back to a good old-fashioned manual screwdriver. After the first screw, I needed to align everything. I didn't bother making the holes perfectly straight since I can still make adjustments at this stage. Once aligned, the rest of the screws will lock everything into place. The second hole was way worse than the first, but I can manage that easily enough later. As for the crooked hole, adding 2 washers to one side of the block was enough to level the rod out. Of course, that wasn't the only mistake I made. Can you tell what went wrong yet? The nut needs to be on the inside of the clamp, otherwise the clamping force will just push it right out of the hole. After catching the mistake, I unscrewed the lock, flipped it around, added the washers back in, and through the power of editing and more screwdriver action, we're back in business. I need a way to turn the rod easily. You can create a head for a rod by using 2 nuts, one acting as a cap and the second to lock it in place. I used a self-locking nut for extra grip, though it's not strictly required. Scrap rods usually have messy threads after being cut with an angle grinder, so I had to file them into submission before the nuts would fit. Please don't yell at me for tightening the nuts with pliers. I only have one 19mm wrench handy, and trekking across the street to my father's-in-law workshop felt like too much of a hassle. I tightened the self-locking nut first, then locked it down with the second one. Just a quick test before the next step. Hey, it's working! With the second cap done at speed, we can move to the final step. During the test, I noticed the rod was cutting into the pine of the tabletop, so I repeated the process to add caps on the opposite side. With the caps finished, it's time for the final test. Not too much force, just seeing if they actually clamp. If you've seen my workbench video, you've already seen those in action. If you haven't, the link is in the description. Overall, I am happy with the result. I'll definitely make similar clamps in the future, though maybe a little less scrappy next time.